Welcome back to Dunwoody Dialogues, where we chat about things going on in Dunwoody. We bring in celebrities and really cool people that you can learn something new from. I am Mark Galvin. I'm the Director of Marketing from Discover Dunwoody, and we have another great guest for you today. His name is Chris LeDoux. He's the co-founder and visual effects supervisor at Crafty Apes, among other things, and we'll get into some of that detail because it's a little squishy there. It's not entirely accurate, but welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad you're here. He came a long way. You came down from Alaska. It took you 3 decades to get here, but we're glad you're here.
It was a long dog sled ride, but eventually made it. So.
I love it. He's from Alaska. You grew up there. You left when you were in high school, got in a truck, and you drove to San Francisco. Is that right?
Well, left the island in high school, ended up in Oregon and then Fairbanks, and then at age 26, then drove down to San Francisco.
So tell me this. Is Alaska really that cold?
Fairbanks was. It would get down to negative 60, and I was filming out there as a cameraman, doing the Iditarod stuff, and it was miserable.
Negative 60. So I'm a native Atlantan. I have no idea what that's like. So if I'm going to go outside and I'm going into negative 60, you're going to tell me to watch out for what? What's the biggest danger?
Other people who don't have jackets.
Why is that?
I mean, it's so cold that you can, you've seen the things where people throw coffee in the air and it freezes instantly. So if you're in the wrong, like Fairbanks sits in a valley, so when it gets that cold, all the exhaust from the car don't go up, they stay down. So you drive through this weird fog made up of a carbon something or other. And
it's a soup.
And yeah, and the sun's not up either. So the sun's only up 4 hours a day at that point. And it's only a very low angle on the horizon, so you're basically living at night for a few months.
And it's
Negative 60.
Negative 60, and you're walking through soup, and you're...
Oh, you don't walk anywhere. Try not to walk anywhere.
Oh, yes, of course, that makes sense. But you don't throw your coffee out the window because it freezes instantly.
No, your cars are plugged in. We've had remote starters for 40 years. So
remote controls
the
interesting.
Cars and you just kind of stay inside. But you acclimate quickly. I remember one time it shot up to negative 10, and we were outside. We were outside in t-shirts, because it felt good.
Wow.
Because you acclimate incredibly fast. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, we didn't want you to come in and talk about Alaska, but as soon as I heard that you were from Alaska, that's such a fascinating part of the world to a native Georgian, that we get upset with humidity,
Oh, no, I get upset with humidity.
Oh, okay. It's okay to be upset with that.
Oh, yeah, no, I filmed in New Orleans this summer.
Oh.
And and Miami. And that'll never happen again. This is just inhumane. Yeah.
It is. It's rough. Well, so you're the founder of Crafty Apes. What does Crafty Apes do?
Co-founder. I had 2 partners.
Okay.
And we're a visual effects
co-founder.
Yeah, it's my brother Tim and my friend Jason.
Okay.
And, we started in 2011 technically in Venice and Los Angeles.
All right.
And it was 4 of us because my other brother was our intern. So we started with 4 of us, and then now there's 8 locations, 3 countries, and we're up to 650 people at the top.
Wow.
And it worked out well. And I sold...
It's visual effects.
Visual effects. So special effects does practical work on set. Visual effects are the computer people.
All right.
So green screen, CGI, all that stuff.
So give me a simple example for how that would work. So whatever that looks like in a basic scene where you got 2 people like this talking.
Sure.
What would you do?
Like we did Hidden Figures, for example.
Okay.
We had a reporter over here at OFS talking about the rocket launch behind him.
Okay.
There was no rocket launch behind him. There was a Wendy's. And instead, so we, put a green screen behind him. And then I went down to Cape Canaveral and shot footage of where the actual John Glenn launch took place. And then rotated him out of that scene, or keyed him out, took a bunch of extras that we'd shot on green screen, layered them into the scene, put a CG fence up, and when you watch it, it looks like there's a reporter in front of the first Mercury missions.
Unbelievable.
So that's a classic example. Is Atlanta gets shot a lot for other cities, so Atlanta for LA, Atlanta for New York, and parts of it look like those places, but nothing really looks like New York except for New York. So you have to replace a lot of stuff, and especially with period pieces. whenever you do period work, if, you have to, the cars need to look a certain way.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. There's a show that I'm watching now on Max called The Gilded Age. And the whole backdrop of that is supposed to be New York in the, what,
Robert
mid-1700s or whatever, late 1800s or something.
Yeah, it was 1870s.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, there is no place that looks like that anymore.
No.
So all of that must be green screen.
Yeah, no, they built a lot of it in CGI. And, you could find parts where there's buildings that are still there. And you can, that's right when photography was first coming out, so there's just a little bit of reference for that.
Okay.
And, but yeah, you construct it all with CG. And, sometimes you'll build facades and things like that. It just depends on what makes the most sense.
Interesting. Right down the street, Assembly Atlanta is just opened, and they built facades on the front of 4 studios. They, if I remember right, don't quote me, but I think there's New Orleans, there's a New York, there's a Chicago. So those facades, while they look great, will still need some other type of effects to make them look.
Depends on what you're doing. I mean,
accurate.
if it's say like a procedural television show like Law and Order.
Okay.
Say you're going to basically the same locations over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost more, procedural television is almost more theatrical, to the point where if you look at, say, Friends or Seinfeld, that's shot on stage, it's theatrical.
Right.
But Law and Order is a procedural single camera, so if you're on a long lens, or if it's me and you, and say there's a window behind us,
Okay.
that facade's going to work.
Yeah.
Especially if we're saying we're up high.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to see, you don't see anything behind there. But
Yeah.
if we're all of a sudden in a coffee shop, and we need to see people behind us. It depends on the lens we're on. If we're on a long enough lens, the background's going to go out of focus, and we just need a couple, motions out there. Film's always about just sleight of hand.
Right.
So what do you need to trick your lizard brain into thinking this is, we're on a boat, or we're this. And you don't actually need that much. I mean, although every time you raise the level, culturally, all of our brains adapt. And so my dad would show me stuff that he thought was cool, and I'm like, that looks terrible. And you guys, but then again, I'll go back and watch stuff that I went back and watched the Never-Ending Story the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was excited to show my kids the Never-Ending Story, and they were not very excited.
Right.
Like, this looks terrible.
That does.
And I looked at it, I go, yeah, it does look pretty terrible. And so, but when you're a kid, your imagination, it's like when you read a book, your imagination's filling in all the blanks. And so if you do enough just to suggest it and prime people for it psychologically, they'll take the leap with you.
Right.
So as long as you don't distract.
That's so fascinating. It is interesting to look at old films and see which ones that look good today that you can go back. One of my favorite is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Still good, but there are scenes in that. The classic scene where he pulls up in the convertible to pick up his girlfriend. It is so bland, right? They're coming down the stairs and he's on that drive. That is not how that film would look today. It would look a lot more interesting than that one scene did.
In theory, yeah, you never know. They could go low budget with it. So it's like, but that's how you can tell an indie film a lot of times from a big budget film is they talk about the scale of the production, how it feels. And so if I say, what does a low budget Thor look like? And it's like, okay, well, first of all, you don't have the talent that you would have. But second of all, like exactly like you're saying, the production design might be way scaled back. And so you look at, because you've seen other, Hollywood's very derivative, and so you'll see that they'll do, Star Wars came out, and then all these really bad sci-fis came out, these low-budget sci-fis that I personally love, but are like hilariously bad, like Flash Gordon, which is a bizarre Queen music video, and Buck Rogers and that kind of thing. So you saw this imitation low budget come out where they didn't quite have the money, so they did what they could do, hoping to get away with it. And sometimes you do, most of the time you don't. And so, that's why your film should sort of mimic, your story should kind of mimic what you have in the sense of make it look intentional.
Right.
So if you have a low budget, yeah, you should have a lot of scenes with people talking, and
dialogue would be king, right? It's just
you don't want to do a big action thing otherwise,
Yeah.
unless you have someone who happens to be a stuntman who works for free or something like
Right.
that, because you'll just look like a bad version of it.
Yeah, I mean, science fiction is a fascinating space today compared to where it was. Even Star Wars back in the 70s, while it was great, the fire doesn't quite look right in the old Star Wars. And today, I mean, something that blows up, you can't tell that it's not real.
I don't know if I'd 100% agree with that.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I mean, they were doing a lot of, it's about knowing when to use stuff. So they were doing a lot of practical miniature work. So when the Death Star blew up, they're blowing up a thing that's, you know, a certain size, but it's a real explosion.
Right.
And you take something like that, you're like, okay, well, how do you make it look at scale? Well, at that scale is all about speed. So you overcrank it, slow motion. Now it's, because it's moving slower, it suggests larger scale.
Oh, interesting.
If you make it all in focus now you think, oh, they must have shot it from a wide lens. And so there's, miniature tricks are very interesting. So because it's like, you know, if I'm looking at your 3D mock-up of Dunwoody over there,
right?
If I wanted to make that look gigantic, there are certain tricks I would employ, like, you know, closing the aperture big time to put everything into focus, that immediately would give it a greater sense of scale. But if I went to a very small, shallow focus, like a tilt shift, all of a sudden it would look like a tiny miniature. And so there's these
because it's perspective too, right?
Yeah, well, it's a way to trick your brain. And when you're on a wide lens, if you go take a landscape photography shot, everything's in focus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if I go do a close-up on you right now on a long lens, you're in focus, the background's completely blurry. That tells me that you're much closer and that you're at a smaller scale.
Interesting. So what he's talking about in our office, we have a scale model of Dunwoody and all the buildings around. And so it's interesting. If you got the right perspective, you can make that look like it's real.
Well, it's like, yeah, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or something.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah,
that's
remember
another.
the intro with the,
absolutely, it was great. So you worked on so many different films. I think that this is really cool. But one of the things that you've done a lot of work on is AI. And when someone hears, especially in the film industry, they hear AI, they go, oh no, what are you talking about? But your AI is formulated to help make the process work better. What's the name of the company that's doing this, and what's the goal?
The company's called Logic, and the goal is we're not doing generative AI, we're not trying to generate images or scripts or anything like that. What we're doing is analysis and optimization. Mm-hmm. So our theory is that we don't ever want to, we had two tenets, which is we're never going to pay anybody less per day, and we're not going to lower the quality level.
Okay.
So to do that, we have to, we're going to make the movie in prep. So instead of, right now, you know, you go, unless you're Marvel and you have a lot of money for pre-visualization, people will do storyboards sometimes, but when you're on set, and VFX is one of the only positions that's there from start to end when you do the whole thing, and, you know, also directed, so I've seen this, nobody knows exactly what's going to be shot. You have shot lists. I can think of no other industry where people will spend this kind of money and not know what they're getting. It's kind of crazy. So we're going to make the movie in prep. So we're hooking up language models that we've custom trained to read scripts and then automatically generate the movie in a game engine.
Okay.
So it'll generate the entire film with
so
cuts.
It's like a storyboard, but it's
think of Halo quality on video games. So
okay.
No, there'll be people moving around, talking. There'll be music. It'll be like watching a movie at video game quality, with cuts, everything. And then the director would go in there with an editor, and they would adjust the script, adjust the movie, adjust the angles, because it's in a game engine, it's all live assets. Mm-hmm. So you can point the camera wherever you want, change the actions. Now you can actually see the movie before you've made the movie. Now you know what you're going to make. And you can
change camera angles.
You can do whatever you want. Now everyone has a shared vision, and now you can optimize how many days it would take to shoot that and the best way to do everything, because every scene is made up of two main elements, location and people. So the question is, on each of those, how do you know, if it's this scene right here, should me and you be on stage on a custom build, or should we be on location? Where should we be? And that question can be answered quality-wise and financially-wise for every scene in the film.
So would you see this system becoming one where I'm even pitching an idea and I can go in and say, here's my idea?
Yeah.
Could it become that affordable?
Well, that's my goal, is because right now movies are so expensive. What that means is people end up going to the lowest common denominator when it comes to choosing the actual stories to be told. So it becomes when you're spending a high amount of money, people tend to take less risk.
Right.
So what happens so what I want to see are more movies like City of God, and which you've never seen, is about the favelas in South America. It's about these kids growing up in, you know, Rio de Janeiro, and some of the best movies. Filmmaking is so collaborative and it costs so much money that what it does is it dilutes the actual stories, which is why we're seeing the same sequels and stuff rehashed over and over again. So if we can make it cheaper, we can actually get the best stories out there, I think, which right now I don't think are necessarily existing IP.
Right.
So we need to get some of the risk, we need to mitigate the risk for the investors, and then we're going to be able to see more creative type works.
So interesting. I could, when I look at the costs of a movie, it's more expensive than a startup, right? You're working on a startup, right? And it's similar to that. Wow, what an amazing upfront investment you have to make, and it's still a gamble, and that's why I've always thought, and this is me being a pedestrian, but one of the reasons that you have these remakes is the brand's already there. So
Well,
you
yeah.
have a built-in audience that they'll come see it. So we hopefully get more people to see it.
Yeah, it's less risky because
Yeah.
you have some kind of visibility into what your audience is.
Right.
But I would argue that beyond just commercialization, that movies actually employ a certain they're important institution in society. You know, mythology has always been something that's important to all cultures. That's how we
Sure.
communicate things. And if you imagine if somebody digs up us in 1,000 years, you know, do you really want them to find, you know, like Iron Man 20? And you're like, that's it. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, well, these guys had superpowers. So I think
Right.
I think what I want to use a lot of this for is, you know, the whole point of our existence is, you know, human connection, contact. The reason why art exists is to communicate things that language is too blunt for. You know, we're communicating what it's like to be, you know, a person in Swaziland in 1690 or whatever. How do you do that? You know, you can write about it, but it's pretty blunt.
Right.
And when you take moving images and music and you weave it all together, as a medium, it's extremely powerful. And, well, obviously as a propaganda piece too, but it's a way to connect people and get people to really develop far more empathy.
Sure.
And by doing so we need to find a way to lower the costs. And right now, most of the costs end up on the cutting room floor, not on the screen.
Wow.
And so streamlining that process, I think, will go a long way towards that.
Interesting. You say that a lot of the cost ends up in the cutting room floor. How much of the product that's filmed, that's generated, actually ends up in the film as a percentage? What does that look like?
Oh, it depends on the filmmaker. If you're Tyler Perry, you're extraordinarily efficient.
Okay.
He
What
wrote,
does that, but what does that mean?
I mean, he's doing maybe 1 or 2 takes, and
Okay.
you know, he's using multiple cameras, but he's incredibly efficient. Clint Eastwood's the same way. Clint Eastwood will be done by 5 every day, and 1 or 2 takes out.
And
David
his-
Fincher's the opposite. He'll do 100 takes until he gets it just how he wants it.
Wow. Clint Eastwood's, his movies are great, so it works for him.
Well, that's the thing is, the best filmmakers, you know, go back to Kubrick, Hitchcock, you know, all these guys, Fincher, they come in with a vision.
Sure.
And so any tool you can create to help people visualize, you know, because it's amazing how many people can't, to direct movies, can't visualize things. They read the script and you're like, for me when I read a script, I'm imagining myself in the theater watching it. And a lot of them, you wonder how some bad movies get made. And when you're reading the script, you're like, no, that's terrible. But they don't see it because
Right.
they can't visualize. And I'm not sure why they're directing. It sounds
Yeah, it
strange.
doesn't sound like they
but
should be a
a
director.
surprising amount of directors that do
But
that.
Clint Eastwood, correct me if I'm wrong, he appears to be able
No,
to see it.
that's what I mean. All the guys I just mentioned all have visions.
Yeah.
But that's why if you know what you want, you don't have to shoot much. You already know. So this is a tool to get people to make the creative choices beforehand.
They can see it.
So you can go in with the plan. Not because what will happen is most of the times, what the current status quo is, you go on set. There's a little bit of a plan usually.
Yeah.
But you'll be there and the director's like, with the DP going, and you're like, man, you should have figured this out a while ago. So what they need are tools to help them visualize that sooner.
That's so interesting to me. There's a look that and you and I, before we started taping today, we talked about Tim Burton. And this week I was watching The Nightmare Before Christmas, right? There's a very specific look that he employed in that film. How do you think the folks that are the creative folks that come up with these ideas, how do they come up with that look, and how do they make sure they pull it all the way through? Because that consistency, I think, would be hard.
No, there's a team of people that do it. So it starts with the director of photography, the DP, and the production designer. You
Okay.
know, and they're coming up with the look, and then as they get the actual images, eventually it goes to what's called the digital intermediate or the color correctors, and so that's or the DI,
Yeah.
and that final
All these acronyms, I'm glad you're
digital
describing them.
intermediate means DI, aka color correction.
Okay.
So at the final stage of the process, there's someone sitting in front of a giant screen in the theater, and they're aligning all the color from every shot, dialing in the lighting. It's a heavy-duty post-production process.
Yeah. It's
So-
interesting. There's some, especially when you look at period pieces, and I go back to the Gilded Age, there's a color throughout that is extremely consistent, that has this, antique feel.
No, there's a certain look. Like Wes Anderson is a very distinct look from his design to his color to everything.
Oh, and I think he's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, he's when you're watching.
But in him, with Wes Anderson, each segment could have a whole different look.
But there's still something that links it through the design.
True.
And it's very there's a certain style which is beautiful.
It is.
But like the Coen brothers will do certain looks for each of their films. Like Fargo has a certain look. It's dialed back.
Yeah.
But instantly it's Fargo.
It feels cold.
Yeah.
Right?
Or we did No Country for Old Men or something like that. You knew immediately. Or one of the famous ones was how was the drug movie? It was it was one where
I'm not going to be able to help you.
it was a famous movie about, but it had whenever they were in Mexico, it was very golden
Okay.
and washed out and very bright, almost overexposed. And when they were in the U.S., it was very blue. It was very and so these looks, like if you watch the movie Seven by David Fincher,
Sure.
dreary, always raining,
Right.
very sort of urban grittiness, and
Right.
so that stuff has a psychological effect on us, very very deeply going
That's interesting.
with our lizard brains.
Yeah. So you said that twice. Lizard brains. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, evolutionarily, we just crawled out of the caves.
Right.
Industrial Revolution was 150 years ago. So, me and you, if we were born at any other time, would have been dead by now. Very angry peasants, probably.
Sure.
And despite what the period pieces try to tell us, that it's all very colorful in the Victorian age, it was only colorful for about 1% of people. So,
Right.
which is always funny where reincarnation is funny, because no one's ever like, a ditch digger. They're always like a queen or a king or something. Like, what happened to the guy who got killed in the front line? Who was that guy? And like, so I think, we're just, our brains evolutionary haven't changed in 20,000 years. So we're existing in an environment that we're not actually prepared for, that we've developed, which is fascinating to watch the effects of.
Yeah, and so part of understanding that psychology helps create entertainment that our psychology will enjoy.
We've never had leisure time before.
Well, it's true.
It's like,
Yeah.
why does the rates of depression only seem to exist in the U.S.? Who has the most leisure time?
Because we have the time to.
By choice. I mean, we actually work more than anyone else, but who manufactures their own anxiety? Americans.
Very interesting. All right, I got another question for you. You have an interesting perspective on time and time management. What is that?
Yeah, going back to that even, we have finite existences, so time to me is our only currency or commodity, and how we spend it is something a lot of people don't think about till it's too late. They say youth is wasted on the young, but if you start to, I think by using some of these new tools, if you're able to look at your life as a finite existence early on and be aware of things, you can actually spend your time in a far better manner than you might otherwise. Because with the hierarchy of needs, so we're food and shelter, we're rent's expensive, housing expensive, food's expensive. So we work all these jobs that we don't really want to do.
Right.
Like most people, I love my job, but that was I knew this early on. And I'm like, no, I'm really bad at jobs that I don't like. And so most people spend their time doing things they don't want to do. For people, they don't really like, for all these, George Carlin has a great skit on it. And so if you start looking at that and you think, wait, did I really need that? It's like, did I really need this? It's like credit card debt, consumerism, materialism. It's, if you look at all those things you think you need, and you don't stop to think about why do I need them and why do I do these things to get them, that's why I think so many people at the end of their life express regret. And so I think if you have tools to change your behavior and give you a different point of view, it's like a lot of people will say, like what in the Bible it was the Saul and Paul moment. So Saul's like, he's some kind of asshole persecuting Christians, and then God gets mad and says, and that's my drunk history version. But like a lot of people now will get stage 4 cancer, and they're like, oh, I changed my life because I got stage 4 cancer. Well, what if you didn't have to get stage 4 cancer to change your life? What if there was something that could open your eyes to, oh shoot, my kids are getting older and I don't see them, or my parents are getting older and I didn't see, there's all this regret people express. And so if there's ways to build tools to give people that 10,000 foot view of their existence, to change their behavior. Because I think a lot of us are just rushing around like crazy, doing things we don't really want to do. When we really think about it, we think we're supposed to do them because we've bought into the, conformity message that's sent down from above, because we're still kind of peasants working for the feudal lords in a sense.
So, how did you get into film?
Crab fishing is very cold in Alaska.
I mean, the route that we've gone through, this is, I think, very interesting, and you worked on getting an anthropology degree, so you understand people in a way that most people don't. Are the skills that you're expressing part of the film industry in general, or do you think you're an outlier?
No, I think they are. I think, to me, everything's holistically connected. You can't ever, the moment you silo something, you actually change the behavior of it. And so if you look at, quantum physics or Schrodinger's cat or double slit experiment, if you ever look those up, the behavior of particles actually changes when we observe them, which violates classic physical theory. And so so to me, you can't talk about anything without talking about the other thing.
Right.
And so when I do film, there's different reasons. Yeah, sometimes I have my own hierarchy. Sometimes it's a commercial hit job. I did not work on Shark Boy and Lava Girl because I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I needed some cash. But at times, I think when you look at the power that it wields, when you say, okay, how could I influence people's lives in a positive way? One of my favorite movies is Big Fish. It's another Tim Burton film. Because it expresses hope, and it also expresses that there might be a lot to the world that we can't see with our eyes, and that it's our imagination that limits us more than anything. Mm-hmm. But there's also times when propaganda. When you look at the Spanish-American War, it was completely manufactured by the American newspapers. It was a made-up war. Before you knew it, we took the Philippines from Spain. We took all their stuff, and for propaganda.
Right.
So it's the power of mass media is incredible to influence people one way or the other. And you can have people, we saw what happened with, the last couple of elections where all of a sudden, your slightly racist uncle is now really racist.
Right.
It's like, and it happens everywhere. It happens right, left, whether, people talk about Fox News, but my mother-in-law watches MSNBC, and I'm like, oh, that's, it's like when like Target. I go, Target is just Walmart for Democrats. Mm-hmm. And like MSNBC is Fox News for Democrats. And so it happens on both sides. And so, I think when you had the advent of the internet, the problem was everybody found what they're looking for. People reinforce their own beliefs because you can go down 6 pages deep in Google and eventually find that guy who's like, see, I told you.
Right.
That's just some guy on Reddit.
Somebody that will convince you something that you want to be convinced of something, you can find something to
So we end up in these echo chambers
Right.
where the marketers want to give us what we want. So what they do is they just build this wall around us, around our news feeds of what they think we want to hear. And
so I got a question. Are a lot of folks in the film, and you've kind of answered it, but do you think a lot of folks in the film industry are has your perspective? Because I think it's fascinating in understanding the power of their medium.
Yeah, I think some do, some don't. In a lot of ways, film crews are just carnies with cameras.
Yeah.
They're gypsies and stuff.
So they're doing the job because it's a JOB.
Well, no, I mean most of them. It's like people that end up in Alaska to fish. It's a certain type of person.
Yeah.
It's a certain, which I have that. If you were to say, what's your soul like? That's my soul. Like,
Okay.
I only owned a house because my wife made me get one.
Okay.
Like, I hate the fact I own a house. I hate it. Because it ties me down.
Right.
And, but that's what it's a lot of I think there's a lot of people there who do want to make a difference and they do want to say something. Not everyone. To some people it's a job, but I think most people are there because something got in their blood.
Right. So fascinating. Well, this interview went so many different ways. This is fantastic. And we were talking before. It was we're going to talk about visual effects, which VFX is visual effects, and somehow that's not quite an acronym. But Chris, I think this is great. I'm so glad that you came in to see us. Tell me this: how do you think the industry in Georgia will do in the next 2 or 3 years? Will Georgia continue to grow the industry, or do you think we'll see a plateau somewhere?
What Georgia needs to do is close the gap in the ecosystem. So
Okay.
there's 5 parts to filmmaking. There's development, pre-production, production, post-production, distribution.
Okay.
Right now, Georgia is being used heavily for number 3, production,
Yep.
a little bit in number 4, a little bit in number 2, and almost 0 in categories 1 and 5.
Yep.
So
Where are categories 1 and 5 happening?
I have a meeting today about one. And if we develop our own products, and then we actually run them through production,
Yeah.
and then we distribute them, people go, well, that's what LA does. I'm like, okay, what is LA? I said, 100 years ago, LA was as far as you could get from Thomas Edison because he had the patent on the film camera. That's why they went there. And it was 72 and sunny every day.
But you can't
And you could film outside. So now we have stages and technology. So what is LA? I go, what is distribution? I go, it's money and a network. But you can have that anywhere.
right.
So when we start to fund our own projects and develop our own filmmakers, and so what I've been pitching around to people is if we're going to adjust the tax credit, we should do is extra incentivize local production companies. So if you're a local filmmaker trying to tell a story, they should have extra incentive, and then you're going to provide the sustainability to jumpstart that industry, and which is the whole point of tax credits. Is the idea is eventually, in the oil industry, tax credits are provided because you can't move the oil. Like you could help someone build a platform and drill and all this stuff, and you can incentivize that. But when you pull the credits away, the oil company is forced to drill there. In film, if the credits go away, they stop filming.
Right.
So the whole point of doing tax credits in this type of industry means we have to cultivate young filmmakers to form their own prodcos, then our own distribution networks and the financiers, and then we have a closed loop ecosystem. Then we no longer are dependent on Los Angeles.
Wouldn't you say that's just a matter of time?
No, nobody's doing shit.
Oh, really?
it's like no, it's been what, they've had the credit almost for 20 years now in some form, and what they're doing is, yes, LA is spending a lot of money here, and everyone goes, look at the numbers, they're great, and yeah, you bring people like me here from LA, and you're like, great, you're creating jobs and whatever, but the problem is if you pull the credit away and it can't stand on its own, it didn't work. If I have to keep you hooked up to dialysis forever, am I really curing you?
Right.
Am I just keeping you alive?
Right.
And so we need a sustainable system. So that's why if we incentivize, Tyler Perry's done it, but he's one person. One person operating 1,000 people. But you know what I mean?
Right.
Why isn't the woman behind this camera right now? Why doesn't she have her own prodco making her films?
Right.
And telling her stories that are getting financed here and then distributed from here?
So what
And
do
then
we
you
do?
have that's an economy. That's an
Yeah,
ecosystem.
how do you get that going? Get people like you talking about it and talking.
No,
to
I'm going to finance my own
Make a
films at the moment, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
So it really does start with the money.
it's always you have to have. There's what's first money in and second money in. Second money is debt money. That's easy.
Yep.
First money is the hard part because
Okay.
the first money, it's backwards in film. First money in is last money out. First money in is very risky,
Yep.
but first money in is how you get talent. So you get the rest of your funding by having talent. So if you're say you're Joaquin Phoenix and I have $1 million and I'm like, I want to make a movie and I need 10 million more to do it. They're like, do you have an actor? And I go, yes. I gave Joaquin $1 million and now I have an actor. They're like, all right, here's the rest. So it's a chicken egg thing.
Sure.
But we need more people comfortable with it because in Georgia people invest in real estate and poultry and timber.
Right.
So they're uncomfortable with film, as they should be. They're not. They don't. You don't invest in stuff you don't know, unless you're me. But it's but as people get more comfortable here with investing in film and learning about the ins and outs of how that works, you will see some rise. But people get so excited because they're like, oh, look at all these stages, look at all this stuff, and that's nice, but it's not sustainable
Yeah.
because now you're dependent on the Georgia taxpayer, which means you're at the sway of the politics. And what you want is that sustainable ecosystem where you're probably especially incentivizing people in more rural areas like they do in New York, so let's throw an extra 5% for people in, the more rural you are, and then do extra incentives for people forming their own production companies here and for the investors. Because if you're an investor and you say, I can mitigate 30% of your risk straight up, that's attractive.
Yeah.
Here,
So it really is. It's almost like there's no foundation built.
It's like we're
someplace
a
else.
mining colony. It's a mining colony.
Okay.
So right now people are extracting revenue. It's you need it. You need to do it the way they've been doing it. It has to happen, but there's also an evolution to the curve.
Right.
So I think we're at that time, at the stage now which we probably should have started a couple years ago. And some people have done a few things, but I'm talking about, no, let's take it more seriously and do some extra actual incentives to the legislature. Extra incentive to really you have this whole crop of young filmmakers now that are trained. What do you do with the trained workforce? Well, you can keep them in the the proletariat and say, keep fighting in the pits, or you could say, no, you're trained, let's put you up to officer level. And when everyone here has their own, plus given the diversity here, you're going to have really unique stories coming out of here. Atlanta's sort of a weird, when I first got here, I was like, it's such an interesting crossroads city. Because I told my friend he got really mad at me. I go, Atlanta has no identity. This place is weird. And I go to Little Five, it's like Seattle. I go over here, it's like Boston. I go, and so, but that in itself is an identity.
Right.
So the fact you can find people from all these walks of life, because when it's, like, you look at Los Angeles, what did Los Angeles do? It attracts the best and the brightest and the most beautiful from everywhere else. It's the opposite of brain drain. So in Alaska, they would talk about brain drain. Like, our best and our brightest don't stay here. I'm like, yeah, because it's cold. And now what does Atlanta do? Well, it becomes, like Los Angeles, a reverse brain drain. It takes the smartest people in this region, because what's the next largest city in 800,000 miles? Charlotte? Charlotte's not a city.
Right.
It's like, so it's like,
well, I would say that. I mean, we like Charlotte.
I mean, I don't know, it's fine, but it's like, I would say Tampa's the closest actual city.
Yeah.
Like Nashville. Maybe?
Jacksonville. Nashville.
It's like,
Birmingham.
It's a long, Birmingham, come on. It's like, it's a long way away when you draw a radius around it.
Right.
So you take the best and the brightest from all those places and you pull them in here. Now your economy is really, really revving.
Right.
And that's why you want universities like Georgia Tech here and things like that. There's a reason for that. And so as you pull that in and then you say, okay, here's the economic opportunity. So if you go start something, you're going to be rewarded. Then you have an economic engine.
Yeah, I think that the state's trying to figure this out, and we've got people like you in the industry that are trying to drive that. And I think that's the key. It's got to start somewhere. A million-mile journey starts with one step. So you got to start to have some people leaning into that, and that's good. I think that where our state is, it's astounding, quite frankly, to see what we've done so far in this state. And yet, in the last decade, it's really exploded. It's been amazing.
Oh no, it's really, everything's there.
Right.
And that's the thing that no one, other states have cut their credit, everything disappeared. Other states had nowhere near the stage space. So the infrastructure that's here, it's very curious to see what would happen if they did, because no one's ever seen it on this scale.
Right.
So I don't want it to go anywhere, but I just want it to be sustainable.
Good.
And so we don't want to be dependent, on the whims of Los Angeles.
Right.
Which I love Los Angeles, but when you concentrate, your portfolio so much in one area, it's just not smart.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, this is very fascinating. We could keep talking about this, but we got to wrap. So please, Chris, tell everybody where they can find you if they have questions about Lumalogic or the future of the industry even.
Once every couple of weeks, I'm at Northside Tavern at the bar.
And where's Northside Tavern? That's which one is that?
It's West Side.
That's
It's over. It's
All right.
best blues club.
Is that at 5 o'clock every Wednesday, or when does that work out?
It's nebulous.
Well, we will point to Lumalogic. Is there a website for Lumalogic?
No, not yet.
All right.
We're building things, so we don't want to talk to anyone just yet.
All right. Well, we'll look for that, and we'll make sure that we list something about questions. I'll tell you what. If you have a question, you can reach out to me. I know where he is.
Cutting out noise is part of my whole theory on saving time, is cutting down noise. So asking people to come talk to me is the opposite of that.
That's the opposite. All right. Well, good. Well, folks, we are so glad that Chris came in here to share some information with us. We love this, and especially because of really understanding what's going on in the industry is something that we in Dunwoody we're trying to understand better. So your perspective, I think, has been very interesting. So we appreciate you coming by,
Thank you.
sharing some time with us today.
Thank you.
Folks, we appreciate you watching us today. This show is produced by Discover Dunwoody, and our producer is Madison Oltz. Our sound technician is Emily Inser Gibson. If you would, and if you want one of our Dunwoody stickers, we have these at the library, City Hall. You can go to Sproul or right here in our office. Come by, we'll be happy to give you a Dunwoody sticker. On behalf of the entire Discover Dunwoody team, thanks for watching. Be sure to follow us on all our social media channels at Discover Dunwoody or our website, discoverdunwoody.com. Until next time, enjoy the day and go out and discover Dunwoody.